So what can you expect for the first 2 weeks of your CBTi program? Well, first of all, in terms of if you were, say, on my program, what would I have you doing? Well, first of all, I would start you on very simple behavioral changes like reducing the amount of time you spend in bed and either doing what's called stimulus control, which is leaving the bedroom if you're becoming anxious, stressed and worried in bed, or counter control, which is sitting up in bed, reading a book, listening to a podcast and then returning, switching the light off when you feel sleepy again. So real simple behavioural changes just in those first 2 weeks. And the reason why I try and keep things very simple is because people with insomnia, they've got so many things they've been trying to do for years to try and force sleep to happen. If I was to say do this, do this, do that, it would just be too overwhelming. So I like to really simplify it for people in the first 2 weeks of their insomnia treatment. So it will be a case of giving really good grounding in sleep, giving all that amazing sleep knowledge just to kind of help you understand what sleep is and why you've got your insomnia. But I lead with behavioural changes. And what you'll find in these first 2 weeks, I like to call it the yo-yo phase, where it's kind of punctuated with a lot of very extreme highs and some very extreme lows. So they're not, these first 2 weeks, an easy time, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But you know what? Living with insomnia isn't easy either. So bedtime restriction. So essentially what you do with bedtime restriction is reduce people's time in bed to strengthen their sleep drive and to reset their pattern and their body clock. I'm not going to go into it now. On all my other videos you will find this, but I'm doing that. I'm reducing the amount of time in your bed to give you consistency, regularity and predictability in your sleep, and so that when you actually go to bed and you sleep through to the morning, or you go to bed and you're out like that, you get a kind of a psychological leap. That's why I always like to lead with this incredibly powerful behavioural change. But what people find when they first start is bedtime restriction doesn't work immediately. It's not like you put it in place and then within the first night you're suddenly sleeping better. It can usually take people 5, 6, 7, sometimes even longer than that to actually start seeing results. But usually within a week you usually start seeing results. The amount of time it takes you to fall asleep decreases, the amount of time you spend in bed awake reduces as well, and often you get your first easy win of the program, and that can happen, yeah, normally within the first week you get your first, oh my goodness, for the first time in my life I've actually felt sleepy before bedtime, and I'm getting that sleepy feeling during the daytime which I haven't had for years. You get one really kind of amazing sort of win where you start seeing these results start to happen. So that's the high which people often get. But there's still a lot of anxiety, there's still a lot of obsession around sleep. So often the high can happen, and because there's still that underlying anxiety, control, worry, fear around sleep, you can get a very big crashing low as well, especially in the first 2 weeks, because you're hoping it to be fixed. You see that win, you get that magical moment where suddenly things are a lot easier, and then the next night, because you've got less of a drive to sleep, maybe you don't sleep so well the next night, and then you kind of switch, yo-yo, up, down. So common. Please don't ever expect CBTi to be an easy run, and I would say probably the first 2 weeks of it are the harder ones before things start smoothing out. And what I often observe with clients in the first 2 weeks of their CBTi program is a hyper analysis around their sleep of data crunching, where they send me an email during the course saying, okay, so Joe, last night I went to bed at this time and I woke up at this time and I got out of bed at this time and I think it took me 2 hours to fall asleep and I was getting sleepy 3 hours before bedtime. And often people get really obsessive about the improvements they're getting and obsessive about the nights which aren't so good. So people have that real kind of delving deep into the data around their sleep, and I often kind of understand it because people are still in that sort of mindset where they're trying to control their sleep. And bedtime restriction doesn't fix that, you know, it's still another controlling element. It's just a controlling element which actually works. But that kind of mindset, we're constantly trying to data analyze and pick your bedtime restriction apart and how things are going apart, isn't often very helpful to people, but it is an incredibly natural thing to want to do, because of course you're going to be very obsessive around your sleep. You're going to be hyper aware of all the improvements and all the times that it isn't working, but it can kind of cause a lot of stress when things are going bad, and even stress when things are going good, because you're trying to keep hold of it. So I suppose really, what's the kind of takeaway message from this video? The takeaway message is that the first 2 weeks of CBTi are probably the hardest, but you are going to want to data analyze, you are going to want to celebrate your successes you're having, and then when you get a crash coming down, you'll be really low as well. It's punctuated yo-yo, up and down, up and down. Know that this is perfectly natural, this is perfectly normal, and I would say after the 2 weeks, month mark, 6 weeks, things start smoothing out a lot more. Things become a lot more predictable. You become less kind of obsessive about the highs, less sort of devastated by the lows, and things start to normalize. You aren't getting such big peaks and troughs. Everything starts to kind of even out, but it does take a little while before that can start to happen. And it's important for me to say that, just to kind of normalize it, just so that you know what to expect. So on my own program, you'll find that on sleepze.com, step-by-step, week-by-week programs. If you've not checked that out and you really want kind of a structured approach that will take you from insomnia to, you know, the best sleep in your life, and show you day 1 do this, day 2 do this, that's on the website. Incredibly inexpensive for what it is. It's going to be the best step for you to actually overcome insomnia. It's there. But yeah, this kind of first 2 weeks, expect this kind of turbulence, expect this yo-yo, expect that it's not going to be an easy ride, but also expect that you are going to get some wins, you are going to get some magical moments, you are going to start seeing changes. But really, I think the magic happens later on in the course. This is just your first kind of introduction to it. All right, really hope this video has been helpful, and I'll see you on the next one.